Welcome to the Pre Nup, the wedding-obsessed podcast designed to help you plan your dream day. I'm your host, Adriana, and each week I'm joined by the industry's top professionals, celebs, influencers, and friends who are sharing their best tips, advice, and mistakes they've made so you don't have to. The Pre Nup is a Love Stories TV podcast. This episode is brought to you by Suit Shop. No, because this is the part of wedding planning that is so much more fun and interesting than people give it credit for. And we always overlook it because we're so focused on the wedding dress. But what about the wedding suit? I'm gonna break it down in 3 really easy steps with examples from my favorite destination for yours to keep suiting, Suit Shop. Number 1, you wanna figure out the formality. If you're going black tie, you're going to want a tux. If you're going cocktail, you'll want a nice suit, maybe some fun accessories. If you're going smart casual, you may want a more relaxed suit. You might want to go no tie. For the ladies, we might want to go no shirt underneath, just blazer and pants. Number 2, I will say this until I'm blue in the face and no one has listened yet, but someday someone will and they'll thank me for it. Factor everything into the budget. The second best thing about Suit Shop is the pricing. I'll get to the first best thing in a second, so wait for it. Suit Shop offers styles that look custom tailored, starting at just $199. Number 3, this is where the best part comes in. Once you figured out the formality and the pricing, you generally want to style the person of honor first, whether that's groom or bride, and then style the rest of the suit wearers around that. Your wedding party may not be a group of dudes on one side wearing suits and bridesmaids on the other wearing dresses. The best part about Suit Shop is that there's something for everybody. Suit Shop makes coordinating your wedding looks for yourself and your loved ones really fun and chic. Regardless of their shape, size, gender, age, style, find something that suits you. Yours to keep starting at $199. Visit suitshop.com to get started. When most people think of wedding stressors, they think money, family, culture, money again. But there is one thing that trumps those things, and that is the dreaded public speaking. I'm talking our vows, speeches, toasts, ceremony scripting for the officiant, and some people really just make themselves sick over this. But there is no reason to make yourself sick because today we are welcoming Steven Greitzer, the founder and CEO of Providence, which is the #1 wedding writing platform. Steven, welcome to the Pre Nup.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. This is a topic that our listeners are going to kind of die over because early on in the process, it's something that they don't realize is going to make them so nervous and the people who are involved so nervous. But when it comes to that crunch time, they really do. I've seen people make themselves physically ill, vomiting, the South End as well. So before we get into all of the wedding writing, just really quickly explain to our listeners exactly what Providence is, because it's really awesome.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again for having me. And first, you're absolutely right. 75% of Americans claim to be more afraid of public speaking than even of death, which is a crazy stat.
That is crazy.
It's crazy.
More than death.
More than death.
I mean, I guess death is certain and public speaking is so uncertain.
And there's this old Seinfeld joke that you'd rather be in the casket than giving a eulogy. And
true.
It's something that we really do see. It's not just the couple with their vows or the officiant with their ceremony, but all your guests as well, father, bride, best man, maid of honor, groomsman, bridesmaid, whomever, are likely terrified of this spotlight moment they've been so honored with. But these moments are very much the impetus of the entire weekend.
Yes.
And as a consequence, a few years ago, we developed Providence to help all these stakeholders with their ceremony, their vows, their toasts, with a suite of various AI tools that will help make sure that all those love and stories and memories, et cetera, that you want to coalesce into a speech can be done so at a very high caliber.
So fabulous. I've been fortunate enough to play with Providence a little bit, and it is such a great platform. We're going to get into some of the features of it, but I think of you somewhat of an expert in this category. You've been in it for a while, you know it, you're always around it. And I want to start from the top, really, just chronologically. So in terms of wedding writing, wedding speaking, I want to start with ceremony. And oddly enough, ceremony is the thing that gets so overlooked in wedding planning. And it is the wedding.
It's the whole reason why we're there.
For sure. And why do you think that is? Why do you think people are just so not interested in ceremony?
There are a lot of reasons why I think that this has become a later point in the planning process. I think it's what culturally weddings now mean to us in our society. It's the party, it's the food, it's the destination, whatever it might mean to you.
Yes.
And also our society is changing, where a majority of Americans are no longer members of an organized religion. And the classic traditional church wedding might be changing dramatically.
Sure.
And now it's another blank canvas that you can then fill with whatever it is your intention might be, which is a huge opportunity, but also a big challenge, and one that really shouldn't be an afterthought and is increasingly emerging as a priority alongside everything else.
That's interesting that you said that shift in what we value, because we think of weddings and we think the party, the food, the drink. And when we're setting for ceremony, we kind of have to be a little bit more reverent. I think in our minds, we associate it with being boring. So how can we change that narrative? What's the first step in creating a ceremony, crafting and scripting a ceremony that is engaging to obviously the bride and groom, or bride, groom, whatever mix up of that it is, and of course the loved ones?
So I think the first most important priority, and it's a critical endemic part of our entire tool and how we think about developing our tool, is a critical detail of every facet of the wedding is personalized authenticity. Every single decision you made in the wedding weekend, from your favorite drink being the cocktail to your favorite food being displayed to your color palette, et cetera, are all about that authenticity as well.
Yeah.
And there's no part of the weekend that should be a better reflection of your authentic individual truth than the wedding ceremony itself. And now every facet, from the toast to the vows to the ceremony, can have whatever tone you so desire. If you want it to be funny and engaging or more solemn and reverent, then by all means, that's your choice. But I do think it is this canvas by which you can invest your personal, individual self, your relationship, your story, and make sure this wedding really does feel like uniquely yours, and that everybody who's there knows why they came.
For sure. I think one of those things that you can incorporate into a ceremony is choosing an officiant that makes sense. So that's the first step. And officiant has a big role. So how do we make sure that we're choosing the right officiant? Is there anything that you've noticed that works really well with certain officiants, or can anyone do it?
So great question. And it's very much like the critical change in how the ceremonies are run over these past 30 years. 30 years ago, almost all weddings were presided over by a clergy member or the like. And today, over 50% of weddings now have a friend or family member.
Over 50%?
Over 50%.
That's a lot.
Now have a friend or family member.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it really can be anybody, because you can now go online, get ordained for free immediately.
Yeah.
And then thereafter, you can preside over these weddings. There might be some legal loopholes, or not loopholes, hoops you need to jump through in various counties and the like, but anyone can do it, which also gives you the opportunity to choose that one person who should do it. And it can be anyone, a close family member, an uncle, a sibling, a best friend from college, a best friend who introduced the two of you, but it really should be someone who you could trust to do a great job to balance the ceremony for both of you. This is not a maid of honor or a best man who's telling either side's story. The ceremony is owned by the two of you.
Yeah. And I think it's important to choose someone who not only, as you said, you can trust to carry out this very important, it's a pivotal part of your life if you choose to get married. And the person who is officiating has to want to do it. But I think, especially with the platform that you've created, it is a lot more accessible for even someone who is not typically comfortable public speaking to get up there and do that and be that special person for someone. I want to ask you about certain things that officiants should not do. So,
absolutely. There's plenty. I have learned a lot of tips and tricks over the years.
Okay, tell us more.
I learned a lot from my own mistakes, which I'm now hoping to help others skip their first time doing it.
Have you ever acted as an officiant?
For the last 8 years, I've been an officiant.
You do it too?
That's where this whole idea came from.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, 8 years ago, two of my best friends asked me to officiate their wedding. And it was one of the greatest honors of my life, but also one of the greatest challenges and burdens, as I had to figure out how to devise from scratch a ceremony that felt traditionally legitimate, but perhaps secular, doesn't offend grandma.
Right.
It's still spiritual, and is legally compliant, and is personalized, unique, and good, and actually like impressive for 200 people who are now sitting there.
Yes.
It's a very hard needle to thread, not to mention the nerves that are coursing through your veins the entire time.
Of course.
It's a huge challenge. So that accessibility you mentioned is a critical facet of this. And on top of all of that, to your point, there's plenty of tips and tricks of what to do and what not to do, just to make sure it actually looks professional and good.
For sure.
For example, one of the classic tips for officiant to do a good job is to get out of the way during the couple's kiss at the end of the ceremony.
Such a good tip.
And the first wedding I did, they're kissing, and all the photos have me behind me with that stupid smile. I'm like, ah! And literally ruined all the most important photos of the life.
No. You know what? The nice part is, if you're choosing someone to be your officiant, if they're in the photos, like, it's not that bad of a thing. All of my wedding photos have Father Gil in the background, who I didn't know my ass from my elbow. Sorry, Dad. I'm sorry, Father Gil. But not really, because he was so mean. But anyway, so for an officiant, someone who is not typically used to this, let's give them some public speaking tips when it comes to actually reciting the ceremony that they've crafted and curated. Do they have to memorize it, or is it okay for them to read off of something? Great
question. At the end of the day, it's really most important that they feel comfortable up there, that they feel poised and ready to do a great job. No one is giving you bonus points for memorizing the whole thing and then fumbling over your words, getting nervous, and forgetting the rest of your speech. No one's giving you bonus points for getting every single word correctly by reading the whole thing the whole time.
Sure.
I often do encourage some mix of the two.
Okay.
Be up there with your speech in front of you. Ideally, another hot tip, ideally printed in some sort of pad folio as opposed to on your phone.
Steven, the phone.
I think that at the end of the day, it involves some risk in that you get a notification, or you could lose battery, or there could be glare on the screen.
And it also just looks like you're texting. It looks so casual.
It looks a little tacky.
It does.
And in 20 years, who knows what kind of device we'll have, but a pad folio with paper will always be classic.
Definitely. I love that tip.
That's one element, but have it printed in front of you. Be familiar enough with it that you can look up and be comfortable, but have it there and turn the pages as needed, and no one will balk or think twice at that.
Yeah. Love that. Okay. What about what an officiant should wear? What kind of attire should we be like? Should we dress up like a clergy person? Is it typical, whatever the wedding attire is for the evening? What do you think?
Personally, I think it's entirely the couple's choice, particularly often the bride's choice.
Yes.
I'll even often say what kind of haircut or facial hair should I have.
I love that.
Because I will be in all those photos. And I'm very much a prop, just here to facilitate this moment for them.
That's so funny that you mentioned the facial hair. I recently had a bride who was freaking out because one of the groomsmen wouldn't cut his hair or trim his beard. He had like the long hair and the long beard. And he ended up at the end of the day doing it, which just shows you bride always wins. But please continue.
At the end of the day, these are their photos. I'm honored to be there and to be there to help support them.
Yes.
And if they want me to wear a tuxedo or a navy suit or whatever it might be, then by all means, I'll comply.
Yeah, anything within reason, not if penguin suit, it's a little bit demeaning, but otherwise it works. An actual penguin suit, not a tux. Okay, so for ceremony, when we're structuring it as the officiant, how do we collaborate with a couple, but still keep an element of not surprise, but we don't want them to feel spoiled to it. We want it to feel very fresh and like, unless they want to know everything that's being said, like they're hearing it for the first time.
So the ceremony builder we've developed was entirely developed for that purpose.
Okay.
To pull out of the couple their authentic truth, all their stories, all the details they care about in their ceremony, but to do so in a way that allows the officiant to then weave it into a ceremony that still feels like a surprise on the day of.
Cool.
So the way it works is we have a variety of chapters from the welcome address, any announcements you want made, like keep your phones in your pockets or thank grandma and grandpa for making the journey or whatever it might be, to the officiant's address, where the officiant can interview each partner individually.
Okay.
And a series of questions about their love story, why they love each other, what makes their relationship unique, etc., but get it from both perspectives, and then allows them to coalesce that together into one great speech.
Yes.
To any readings and rituals, the legal language for the declaration of intent and the pronouncement, etc. And once you do all that, we then help you generate that all together into a great speech that weaves all those details together, reflecting both partners' individuality too.
It's so smart, Steven. I love this platform for so many reasons. And I think a lot of what we're talking about, the pressure's on, and we're thinking about all of these elements of the ceremony. We want to impress people. But at the end of the day, it comes back to that point that you brought up earlier, that personalized authenticity. And it is about the couple. And as much as it is an honor and you want to put your best foot forward and you want people to be like, that was such a great ceremony, you have to remember what it's about. And it really is about the couple. So
well said. After the wedding ceremony, when I'm at the cocktail hour,
yes,
I'll know I did a great job. Not when people congratulate me on killing it or doing a great job, but when they say that was so them. The more it really does feel authentic to them, the better. And I've done weddings for a cousin I've known since birth, for best friends from elementary school. But even though I've known them for years, I have all my own stories about them, I still go through this process to pull their own words for each other. Because the more I'm telling their story through their own words, the more it does feel authentic to them.
Yes. Oh, okay. Okay. And then last thing I want to touch on, because you gave a really good piece of advice about moving out of the way for the photos. There are sometimes announcements that need to be made by officiant, whether it's ushering people into cocktail after or maybe put our phones away, things like that. So in order to not deter from ceremony itself, how do you recommend that officiant makes those announcements?
So the most common announcements are exactly as you mentioned. The beginning of the ceremony of please take your seats, we're going to begin in a minute, please keep your phones in your pocket, etc. And then the end of please go follow the path to the left for the cocktail hour. I do try to bookend the whole ceremony and have it on other side of the music cues to begin the procession. So increasingly, and our tool does provide all this blocking embedded within it itself so that a first-time officiant has those instructions there.
That's really smart.
Don't mess up the way that I did my early
things
ceremonies.
People don't think of.
Exactly. But I'll typically go out there, welcome everybody, tell everyone to take their seats, mention to keep your phones in your pocket because the couple wants to see your smiling faces, not your rectangles. And then say, okay, let's get ready. And the music will begin. And then it feels like the full ceremony is starting thereafter. And then I'll wait until after the kiss and the fanfare to make any final announcements at the end.
Fabulous. Okay. That's very, very good advice. And then you can just follow along the Provenance prompts. So the next part of the wedding writing, wedding public speaking aspect I want to get to is the vows. So this also, I mean, it's a part of ceremony, but it's something separate in and of itself. It's really, when we talk about personalized authenticity, you know, that really is the helm of it. So there's one thing in vows that really bother me when people do personalized vows. And I'm sorry if anyone is listening and has done this, but when people start them with, from the moment I met you, if I hear one more set of vows that starts with, from the moment I met you, I mean, I get it. You wanna paint that picture from the beginning, but what's a better way we can start it? I feel like it's not necessary.
There are these cliches and platitudes we hear over and over again. I think that's a great one for the vows. When it comes to toast, it's the
for those of you who don't know me,
my name's Steven. I'm the groom's best friend. Like it's just we hear it every single time.
It absolutely puts a dagger through me.
And especially when you're going to weddings and you're attending weddings, as most people who are getting married are doing so, you see those again and again and again, and it does immediately turn off the audience. So it's like phone in the rest. So I do agree with you. So there's a lot of ways to launch into it. Mm-hmm. And I think that launching in with some lighthearted joke, perhaps, and then going into the sentimentality in the latter half, I think often does play well.
Yes.
And I think just speaking from your heart and not trying to fit some sort of standard vow formula.
Yeah.
And freeing yourself from that really does help. Now there's formulas and structures and bones you can follow in terms of story and attributes about the partner and the like, and then promises, and then some concluding statement and promise to the community you're now building and the like, that I think tend to be a great roadmap to follow. But I'd say that the bigger issue that I often see with vows, and one that we try to solve for in our vow builder, is not even necessarily your own individual vows, but how the vows fit together.
Okay. Yes. How do we make sure that one person's vows aren't spectacular and the other ones are dog shit, for lack of a better word?
I love the tradition. Exactly. I love the tradition that we now have where you write your vows separately to be shared for the first time on that day.
Yeah.
But that also involves a lot of risk.
For sure.
Maybe he goes short and funny. Maybe he or she goes long and sentimental.
Yes.
And then they just feel unbalanced. You still want to each reflect your own authenticity, but you also want everyone in the audience feeling like, oh yeah, they should be getting married. Those felt like they mirror each other to some extent.
Yes, because at a certain point, it almost feels like a competition, like who had the better vows.
Exactly. And if you could somehow balance that out, each have beautiful vows that match each other, I think it just does balance the ceremony.
Yeah.
So what we do through our tools will help make sure that they're balanced in tone and length at the very least. Even if the content is entirely separate, which I do think is beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. Very smart. So what is, for anyone, for those of you who don't know me, for those of you who don't know what this is, what is a personal declaration?
So like the declaration of intent, perhaps?
Is that the actual vow portion, or what is it?
So today, a majority of couples are now writing and reading their own personal vows in the ceremony.
Yes.
And that is the promises, it's the beautiful statements they say to each other. The declaration of intent, or traditional vows, or however you might want to describe them, are the more traditional I do's.
Okay.
Where the officiant might say, do you take blah, 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 and then you say, I do, or you repeat after me.
Sure.
And in most counties across the country, that's actually legally required.
The I do portion.
The I do.
Okay.
Affirmation of I indeed do intend to marry this person in front of a witness.
Sure.
And when that's uttered, that makes that ceremony actually legal.
Okay.
So that declaration of intent is actually a traditional component and often a legal component of the ceremony as well.
Okay. So in order for two people to actually be married, those I do's need to be uttered in front of a witness.
Often there's not actually that much legal required. For the marriage certificate to be signed, it's a officiant to be there to solemnize, the two parties being actually willfully there.
Sure.
And a witness there to witness the whole thing. The affirmation of I do intend to marry this person. I do intend to marry this person as well. And a pronouncement from the witness. I'm not a lawyer, so please don't sue me if I'm slightly wrong in some places. But from our understanding across most counties across the country, those are the bare expectations.
I'm just picturing someone trying to sue you for giving that piece of advice. That's really funny. But okay, in terms of things that you can do, because there are certain things, of course, that you can't really veer from. That's what makes it a legal binding commitment. But I think sometimes people like to look outside of the box a little bit, see how they can get unique. Have you heard of the group vow?
Yes.
Okay, explain this to us.
I actually love this.
Okay.
And I do it all the time in my ceremonies. And actually, to bridge it back to something we discussed earlier, I connect it to the critical blocking step of moving myself out of the way from behind the couple. So basically what I'll do is you have a series of crescendos at the end of the ceremony. We have the I do, the rings there. You have the, so they're like on the precipice of giving the big kiss. I'll then move out of the way and address the audience and say something to the effect of, a couple in love do not live in isolation. We who are gathered here today have a responsibility to this couple. Do all of you who are here today like vow to surround them in love, support them in their marriage, and build a community around them, or something to that effect.
Not me getting chills.
And then
oh my gosh.
the whole crowd will, in a huge raucous reply, say, we do.
Yeah.
And then I'll turn and say, by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you partners in life, and they kiss.
And that gets everybody involved too.
Yeah, it's this great moment of we are now one community that is actually here. And the reason why we all came here was to support you in your marriage.
Yes.
So I do love that moment. It has the double benefit of getting the officiant out of the way for the kiss.
Yes.
And it leads to like one last great crescendo of applause and excitement before the kiss.
Yeah, I really like that aspect of it. We were talking about how we can make it not boring and not of the expectation. But I think part of the reason people get a little bit bored with ceremony is because it's not about them for 5 minutes. And when you do involve people, it sounds funny and I'm only teasing a little bit, but when you do involve people, it makes them feel like they are part of that special day. They're not just there to eat, drink, and dance.
Totally. They're co-owners.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Very smart. I like this. Do you have any other fun ideas for vows? Anything that you've seen that is really cool?
You know, with the ceremony itself, I'm starting to see more and more creativity imbued within it.
Okay.
You know, you have the standard components, the welcome, the officiant's dress, the vows, the declaration, the pronouncement, etc. But more and more couples are now adding some sort of reading or ritual to the ceremony as well. This is a great opportunity to break up the ceremony, to involve an aunt who you love who didn't have a toast later in the evening.
Yeah.
Or to reflect and pay homage to either of your cultures, ethnic, religious backgrounds, or to just mention something that's important to the two of you.
Yeah.
We actually have a library of over 600 readings and rituals from all faith, cultural, ethnic backgrounds, as well as plenty of secular song lyrics, poems, movie quotes, etc.
Yeah.
That we've seen people include. One of my favorites is this ring warming ceremony.
Ringworm?
Ring warming.
Oh.
My apologies. That'd be a creative ceremony. I've seen that.
That would be very creative.
Yeah, we'll see. The ring warming, which I believe has its genesis in Ireland, where both partners will have their rings start in the back of the audience. And it'll pass through their friends and family one by one as someone will whisper a blessing or a wish or the like into the ring. And it'll make its way up to the front. Everybody that you love has now touched this ring for the last time before it's put on your finger. And I think it is another beautiful way to involve the audience to what you were speaking about earlier.
Yes.
And I'm seeing that being used more and more.
I love that. That's a really good one. That's a nice way to include people that doesn't feel cheap or cheesy. It's like, not that the other things did, but I really like that. I resonate with that one.
And because it's happening in the background and doesn't interrupt the ceremony too, I think that's a beautiful way to involve everybody that you care about.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's go next to, we get through ceremony, flying colors. You know, we have a great scripted ceremony. We have great vows. Now it's time for speeches and toasts when we get to reception. So run down for me, who do you typically see giving the speeches and toasts at weddings?
So increasingly, we're actually seeing a rise in speeches at rehearsal dinner plus a reception.
I love it, Steven.
Totally.
More of this.
No one can sit through 20 speeches in one night. It's just brutal for everyone.
And it's such a short evening. And the couples and their families, they're paying a lot of money. You only have anywhere from 4 to 6 hours together. And we're going to spend 45 minutes to an hour on speeches. And
don't get me wrong, I love the speeches. So much so it's my profession.
Of course.
But at the same time, at some point, people are starting to roll their eyes, get antsy, want to hit the dance floor, want to grab another drink. There's only so many people could say the same thing over and over again. So breaking up between the two makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Who do you think is reserved for wedding night?
Increasingly, we're seeing the format that it might be traditionally father bride you often see, but increasingly I'm seeing father or parents of both partners. Okay. And maybe a tandem speech by parents on either side or whomever it is. You might want to represent yourself in that light.
Sure.
And then often a best man or maid of honor. Mm-hmm. And I think that those four, or really if you have 2 half speeches from each parent and then the other best man, maid of honor, or best man, whoever it might be, is typically enough for the reception, when you also have the band and everything else coming thereafter.
Yes.
Rehearsal dinner, you could typically load up more, but you also don't want to overdo it. So I think that 3 for each partner feels relatively standard.
I like that too. I think that is kind of a sweet spot. You're not going to exhaust people. Something that made me so happy when I was on Providence and looking through one of the prompts was the length of time. And the options for the length of time were 1, 2, 3, and 4 minutes. And I said, thank you, Steven, for creating this fabulous thing, because I think so many people don't realize that in order for the speech to be good and to keep people, it has to be relatively short.
And at the end of the day, as we on the wedding planning side understand, this is a logistical component of the weekend, not unlike the food or the band and everything else. And if you have a father bride who goes off the rails for 45 minutes, the entrees are going cold in the back and everyone's ready to just jump ship.
Yes.
So the way that our toast builder works is a guest can find the toast builder themselves, or the couple can invite their wedding party to it and can message, hey, love for you to honor us at your wedding. You'll be speaking at this time slot. Please speak for about 4 minutes, and here's your time allotment. And please mention growing up together, but for the love of God, don't mention that story from college.
Yes. I told this story on the podcast before, but my husband was doing a best man speech for his best friend, and his best friend won't mind that I tell the story on here because he tells the story often. But long story short, the story was about my husband's best friend shitting his pants. And my husband's practicing the speech with me, and it's so good. And he gets to this point where he's telling about John crapping himself. And I'm like, honey, you can't say that there. His wife's family is going to be there. They're paying for the wedding. They're putting on this beautiful black tie event. You can't get up in front of 200 people and tell everyone that the groom crapped himself. And maybe in some instances you can, but I knew them well enough to know maybe that wouldn't go over as well. Time and place.
I think I'm smiling so big, not because of how that funny that is, which it is, but also a shout out to my friends Josh and Leo, who also, Josh did a great story about Leo crapping his pants at his wedding. It played well, and it woven into a beautiful story about how Leo is cool under pressure and is humble and can laugh at himself. But maybe that's a motif that we're going to see rising.
Maybe. You know what? Maybe we should all just lean into crapping
ourselves stories, by all means. Yeah, really diffuse the pressure at the wedding. Too funny. But I do think that these moments are often the highest risk.
Yes.
And we've all seen a disaster play out too, where someone does go and try to be funny, but they offend somebody in the audience, or even worse, the couple themselves. I've seen a groomsman try to go for an entire comedy special at the rehearsal dinner and get uninvited to the wedding the next day. And he just offended the bride's family so much.
You hate to see it.
And I often do encourage humor, but to really at least get a second pair of eyes to make sure that it's within reason and you're not risking offending somebody.
Know your audience too.
Yeah.
I always think of that scene in Wedding Crashers when I think Claire is the character, the Rachel McAdams character. She's trying to practice her speech, and it's terrible. And you need to have that sounding board, which is another thing that I love about Providence. There is a professional system that allows you to practice not only bouncing your speech off someone helping you to craft it, but actually doing that public speaking portion of it.
We do have public speaking coaches and professional speech writers, including comedians and White House speech writers, could help punch up speeches further for sure.
Amazing. Just speaking of things that we shouldn't do. What do you find that people get wrong in speeches? I know we talked about that initial, for those of you who don't know me, which is really a pet peeve of mine, but are there other things that you see in speeches that people they're trying, but they're missing the mark a little bit?
I do love that motif that we often see the pod to the beginning, because I think it's just through broad use. Like if someone is listening and who has used that, they should not feel upset or offended that we're digging at them, because we're digging at a majority of people who do that, which is why it's getting tougher and tougher to hear that. And I think that someone will really stand out if they can skip over that or encourage their party to do so, because often they are introduced before they speak. So everyone does know who they are.
Exactly.
But I think another critical failing I often do see that I try to encourage people to shift away from, and our toast builder does account for, is that when somebody goes up and does a 5-minute roast on the groom or on the bride and don't even mention the couple, the reason why we're here, or the other party.
Right.
I think that these speeches at most should be 70% on the partner whom they know, and at least 30% on the other partner or on the couple as a whole, or on why they're excited for this weekend.
Yes.
Because it really is a wedding speech. It's not just a bachelor party toast or the like. It really should be about why we're here and why they're here to validate why we're here.
I think people forget that a lot, because you'll hear speeches, it's like, Susie and I went to grammar school together, and she was always this and that, and they talk about their relationship with someone, which is beautiful. But again, that's a great place for maybe something like a bachelorette party. I think something that the toast giver should keep in mind is, one, it should be a toast more than a speech. A speech implies like this isn't a TED Talk here,
Exactly.
We're wishing the couple well in some way, shape, or form. And I liked your point. The 70-30 rule is good, even if you're not going to do a 50-50. Because sometimes you don't really know one as well as the other. And you can kind of lean into it, but showcase why this couple is important to each other and why they're important to you, but not make it about yourself as the toast giver.
I totally agree. And I think that for that 70-30, even at the final 30%, you're right. If you don't know the other partner super well, you could talk about how your partner is made better as a consequence of that relationship or whatever else it might be. At least it feels a bit more balanced and wedding appropriate.
Yes.
But the critical thing that you were just mentioning is it's not about you. Another motif we do see is when somebody tries to validate how strong their friendship is by telling the whole story of their own friendship with their person.
Yes.
Your friendship's already validated by the fact that you've been asked to do this honor. It's really about here to toast to the marriage itself.
That's such a good point. Your friendship is already validated by the fact that you've been chosen to do this honor. I think we need to clip that because I actually have fallen into it too. I gave a speech at my best friend's wedding, and I've told this before as well, but I completely bombed because I was helping her plan. There were other things that took priority for me. Yeah. And when came time to go up, I just totally zoned out and was like, ugh. By the grace of God, it was short, and that was my saving grace. But yeah, I think that there is this idea that you want to showcase, you want to prove to people that you have the right to be up there, but the couple has already proven it to you.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I'd also mention, to be fair to you for all the work you did planning and then bombing that speech, it's also a huge responsibility. And I'm increasingly seeing it just kind of tossed upon somebody a bit carelessly. Like, it really is a huge ask.
It is.
Especially given that 75% of Americans are more afraid of public speaking than death. That person might not feel comfortable doing it in the first place.
Sure. So
finding the ways to give them extra help and extra guidance, I think, is really helpful.
Yeah.
If I may mention one more thing, I saw at a wedding recently that I loved.
Yes.
At my friends Lucas and Lean's wedding in London a few weeks ago, they did something I thought was beautiful and brilliant. At their rehearsal dinner, they had about 10 speeches, but it did not feel tiring at all because they structured it as a Eras tour. They assigned each person, hey, your siblings, talk about our early childhood. Hey, your best friend from elementary school for him, best friend from elementary school from her, you just talk about that chapter, and so on and so forth through high school, college, early life in SF, work, etc. And with the constraints of each of you are hitting this specific moment, each person came with the funniest story from that moment, attributes that spoke to. And it really felt like the entire narrative of the night built upon each other. And I thought it was a brilliant way to involve a lot of people without a lot of redundancy.
That is such a good idea. And it does keep things fresh. And you're getting the best of everything because you've assigned it. And you know your people well. You know that they're going to highlight, the thing that maybe you remember about them. And it feels more personal that way. That's such a fun idea. I really love that.
I thought it was great too.
I love that a lot. I think something else that you touched on, just the comfort of the speaking and, how it can be uncomfortable for people. I always hold the belief that the best man or maid of honor, that is the honor of standing by the person as they get married. They don't necessarily have to be the person who gives the speech if they don't want to or if you don't want them to. I've seen a couple weddings where best man and maid of honor stand by the couple, and then they actually choose another person that they're close with, maybe someone who's a little bit more comfortable speaking, to actually give that speech or toast.
I've absolutely seen that too. I will say that one of the reasons why we built the tools we did was to diminish that stress so that whomever it is that you wish to honor you on that day has a bit of an easier approach to it. And it makes them have that surge of confidence. They know that they can do so.
Yeah.
But I agree generally that the reason why you're asking this person to speak might not be because they're the best orator in your friend group. It's because they were your best friend in elementary school or your sibling or whomever. So it's definitely a huge ask that not everyone is equally prepared for. And it's our hope to make that a bit easier.
Yeah. Everyone has the capability to public speak. And especially with Provenance, I think it's going to be a lot easier for people. So we want everyone to know about it. Okay. So we've been talking for so much longer than I realized. Okay. We are going to, before we delve from our wedding writing or wedding speaking, is there anything else that you wanted to drive home, something that I didn't touch or ask you about?
So I'd say just kind of tie together what we do.
Yes.
We have a ceremony builder that helps a couple and officiant collaborate together. A vow builder that helps both partners write their vows separately, make sure they're balanced. A toast builder to make sure that everyone hits their mark. We have professional speech writing, public speaking coaching to help give you that extra oomph. We have a Providence Pro suite for wedding planner to provide all these tools to their couples and their guests. And we're coming out with a variety of additional offerings, including a AI thank you note builder that allows a couple to write all their thank you notes immediately.
This is what I'm so excited about. So one of my things is like, thank you notes have to be personal. You can't send a generic thank you to everyone, but they take forever. I mean, I have couples, it takes them a year to get them out, like a full year.
Who wants to sit down and write for 12 hours, relatively similar things, 150 times? It's a pretty brutal chore, but it is an important one.
Yes, you are saving lives here. Truly, this is the thing. And it's all really great. I have explored Provenance and it's just such a nice, aesthetically pleasing platform, and it's very to the point, and it really draws things out of you that you wouldn't have thought of in terms of writing any of these things, scripting ceremony, vows, speeches, etc. But this thank you note thing that you're rolling out, I cannot wait. I think
it's gonna be a kicker. I'm very excited for this. Our couples have been asking about this for a while.
Yes.
And it still allows you to send very personal notes to everybody.
Sure.
But ensure that you could do so in a fraction of the time.
Amazing.
And I'm very excited for that.
I'm very excited for it as well. Something else I'm very excited about, we're going to pivot into a little game today.
Great.
So we are going to play a little game of Beat Chris. All right. So
I'm ready. It shouldn't be too hard.
Hi, Chris. Yeah. Chris is somewhat of an expert in the wedding sphere. So this is a wedding.
Somewhat.
This is a wedding trivia game. And
I'm very curious to see how I do.
Yeah. So let's see. If Steven wins, we're going to give Pre Nup listeners the 10% off of a Provenance service. Stakes are high. All right. First question. Gentlemen, are you ready?
Yes.
I'm ready.
What is the most popular wedding destination in the U.S.?
Wow. By sheer volume of couples?
Yes.
Chris, do you have your answer?
I have a plausible one, but I don't want to say too much about it. I'm thinking of it might be too fancy. I'll put it that way. It might be too fancy for it to be the biggest number.
I would like the destination, the city, not the venue.
Because I'm generally feeling like South Florida generally.
Okay.
Which, if I have to go to a city, I would say Miami.
Okay.
Thinking of it as having the right climate for weddings for a large part of the year.
Okay.
But I'm not feeling that confident. Chris, what are you thinking?
I'm gonna go Maui, Hawaii.
Wow. Okay.
Which I love. And I love Hawaiian weddings.
Yes,
I just felt like it might be harder for many people to get to.
So you were both wrong.
Fair, okay.
It is Las Vegas with 114,000 weddings a year.
I feel pretty embarrassed.
That's a trick one because that's a lot of elopements. That's not a traditional wedding place, but the most common.
I nonetheless feel quite ashamed for missing that.
There should have been a caveat: marriages that last more than one day or one night.
That's true. That's true. I know. I was going to put on here what was the shortest and longest marriages on record, but I feel like that's a hard one. Okay, gentlemen, are you ready for the next question?
Yes. Redemption.
Okay. Name this popular bridal processional tune. I'm going to hum it. Do we need more?
No, I know the song. I just remember the name. It's
You can continue to hum it if that's better.
All right, well, I'm going to get it wrong. So Star Spangled Banner is my final answer.
Correct.
Yes.
I feel it's like a Florida something.
You're on the right track.
Oh, my team's going to make so much fun of me for this.
Do we want the answer?
It put us out of our misery.
It's Canon in D. Yeah, and it's
Okay.
one of the most popular bridal marches.
God, I'm not doing too hot here.
We are
Let's see how
0 for
the chance.
0, gentlemen. And I'm not going to lie to you. I did specifically choose this game because you are both straight men. And I just wanted to pit two men against each other and see how we did.
Yeah, we're proving out.
All right, guys. We wear our wedding rings on the fourth finger of our left hand because ancient Egyptians believed this.
I thought it was like some kind of like artery connected to your heart
I
thing.
feel like I heard something
I
like
thought
that.
that's what it
Yeah.
was. Was
All
that
right.
it?
Yeah, we got a point for
give it a Chris, give it a
Yay.
Chris.
No discounts for any of the listeners.
Discounts do not apply. All right. Come on, Steven. You got to come in hot. We want to give
Well
those
done,
people
well
the
done.
discount. Okay. In China, what is the traditional wedding dress color for brides?
Is it red?
It is red.
Okay, great.
Okay,
I need to
cool.
click on the trigger
quick
there.
on the buzzer. I would have said
Yeah.
pink.
That's a good guess, too. That's a good guess, too. Okay. The something blue in something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. Do we know this rhyme?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Chris has never even heard of this. So.
Gives me an advantage of the start, but let's see how this goes.
Okay, so there is a rhyme in weddings, Chris. It goes, the bride needs something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue, and a sixpence for her shoe. And it's an old English
All right.
rhyme, and it brings luck upon the bride if she has these things. The something blue symbolizes 4 things. Name one of them.
Wow. This is a great trivia question. I'm
This
be
is
very
hard,
curious
and
what
I
other
wouldn't have
4
gotten
are.
this either, so.
Given its genesis and history, I'm going to guess there's something that has to do with like fertility or having a baby or something like that, or starting a family.
You're on the right track. You're on the right track.
I'm curious what all 4 of them are.
Okay.
Can I hear the like riddle thing again? Whatever it is.
Yeah, it's something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue, and a sixpence for her shoe.
I'm going umbrella.
Umbrella, a beautiful guess, but incorrect.
Umbrella.
So you were closer, Steven. I'm inclined to give it to
Maybe
you.
like a half point.
But they are love, purity, faithfulness, and modesty.
Okay, I don't even think I deserve that point. I was,
Fertility's on the right track, but it's actually just the opposite. Like fertility is like
no,
we're
I don't
boning,
deserve
and this
that
is
point.
like I've never done that before. Okay. All right, guys, you ready for question number 6?
Sure.
What is the original reason couples were not supposed to see each other prior to the wedding?
I'm going to go first. I'm going to beat you to it. My understanding is it has to do with back when this was more of a families almost quasi selling their person to the other with the dowry and everything else involved. You didn't want somebody the night before either balking and leaving and disavowing of the merger, so to speak.
That's exactly right. So it's a lot more eloquent than my answer. It's to make sure that the other couldn't run if one was ugly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess the same would be true today. What if you see your bride or groom and you're like,
yeah,
it
actually,
ain't
cold feet.
it.
Crazy.
Totally kidding. Okay. And last question. So according to a study from 2017 to 2022, this was the most popular first dance song at weddings.
Tennessee Whiskey, Chris Stapleton.
From 2017 to 2022?
I don't know when that song came out, like
Me
2015 or something. But yeah.
Is it that old?
I feel, yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right.
Traveler? I think that album came out around
That's
then.
a good guess. Okay.
2017 and 2022. I'm going to guess a Taylor Swift song.
Okay.
And I'm going to guess Love Story.
It's a good guess. You both had good guesses, but it is Ed Sheeran's Perfect.
That's a better guess.
All right.
Yeah.
I should have done that.
So
Fair.
who won? I wasn't keeping score.
I think we
Probably
both
not me.
lose, probably.
I
but
think he won. I think he had at least two answers.
I think it
one.
ended up. I think you did get two, and you
Yes,
got one.
I
Okay,
believe
all
so.
right.
In any case, the listeners definitely deserve a discount for having to endure that poor performance.
Yes.
Amazing, amazing. So, Steven, you have generously provided a discount for Prenup listeners if they use the code Prenup10, PRENUP10. They're going to get a 10% discount on Provenance, which we love.
Absolutely.
Love it. Okay. We are going to skip premarital counseling today for time purposes, and we're going to finish with an after party. So we do this every episode, Steven. They're just fun wedding questions, personal. Don't think too much into them. Just whatever you like. The first question of our after party is Honeymoon Hotspots, and it's brought to you by our amazing sponsor, Honey Fund. Honey Fund is the perfect way for couples to receive the gift of unforgettable experiences for their honeymoon. And for a limited time, our listeners who start their registry at Honey Fund will get $25 added to their Honey Fund account. Visit honeyfund.com/prenup and kickstart your registry for your dream honeymoon. Getting back into it, what is your honeymoon hotspot, Steven?
I love an adventure across Italy.
Oh, an adventure across Italy. Any specific cities that you love?
I'm a huge fan of Florence.
Okay.
And I think Lake Como is the most beautiful place I've ever seen.
Stunning. Anything more granular, more specific? Where do you like to stay? What do you like to do?
I have 3 restaurants in Florence. They're my 3 favorite restaurants in the world.
Tell us.
Vinia Vecchia,
Okay.
Cinghiali Bianco,
Okay.
and the last one starts with a C, and I'm going to butcher it, so I'm going to skip that one for now. The other 2 are perfect.
If you think of it, we can include it
Yes,
in the show notes.
great.
Okay. And now I am starving. Thank you so much. Okay. What is one song that's going to get you on the dance floor at a wedding?
One of the best recent things I've seen at a wedding, at a wedding I actually went to last weekend, the band started the night off like right after the first dance with a acoustic run through of like 2010s EDM with like Avicii's Levels acoustic from the band.
Cute.
And I've never seen a sweatier dance floor before appetizers were even served.
Oh, I love
So
that.
it was a really impressive way to just kickstart the entire night for everybody.
That's a really good idea. That's very fun. Okay. I'm into that. Steven, what hors d'oeuvre will you never pass up at a wedding?
I'm a sucker for Pigs in a Blanket.
Me too.
It's just such a great, easy classic.
They're the best. You can't beat them. They're
Totally.
excellent. What is your signature cocktail or mocktail?
I have been loving the increasing trend toward espresso martinis. I think that at a wedding in particular is a rocket fuel back into the dance floor.
Hell yeah.
So I think that's going to be increasingly a standard.
Definitely. And especially during cocktail, that's usually when people will try the signature drink. So that's very spot on. I like that. All right. And last question I have for you, sir. If you could invite one living dream guest to your wedding, who would it be?
If I could have 2, it would be
Exacto.
both of my grandfathers who passed.
Oh, that's nice.
I really wish that they could be there, but yeah.
Oh, that's really sweet. Okay. Well, I love that. All right. Steven, this was fabulous. We learned so much today. Tell people where they can find Provenance and all the things.
And thank you so much again for having me.
Thank you.
Everything we discussed can be found at provenance.co. That's provenance.co. And you can follow us at our Provenance.
Wonderful. And just as another reminder to finish out the episode, Steven and Providence are so generous to give the Prenup listeners a 10% off, 10% discount on their Providence services. So definitely check them out. Thank you, sir, for coming on. This was
And
wonderful.
that code is the Prenup 10.
Prenup 10. Yes. And we'll leave it in the notes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning into the Prenup.
This episode is brought to you by Suit Shop. Find something that suits you. Yours to keep starting at $199. Visit suitshop.com to get started.
Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform or on the Love Stories TV YouTube channel. Follow at _pre_nup and at Love Stories TV on Instagram for more. Have feedback or suggestions for the next episode? Feel free to reach out to us at podcast@lovestoriestv.com.